Greetings, friends. I was 5 years old and playing. I remember my parents arguing. It quickly escalated, and they started throwing things across the room and started yelling at each other. All of a sudden, my father was standing on top of my mother and holding her down violently, and all I could hear was a scream of pure horror from my mom and the sounds of intense battle. As I say this, the memories are playing in my head, and it feels like I'm right back there in that living room, experiencing it all over again. I was completely powerless and unable to break them apart and save my mother. In this very moment, I feel the exact same horror and pain that I felt in my heart, and so many feelings that I cannot possibly put into words. This description is just the tip of the iceberg, as it was much worse than you can imagine. My whole childhood was intense, to say the least. I carried a pain in my heart that grew into an uncontrolled aggression and heavy trauma that followed me through life and seriously destroyed me in many ways. I felt like I was doomed forever. At least so I thought. In this episode, I want to talk to you about one of the perhaps most important topics that is truly personal to me and to a lot of you out there. It's really what can make or break you in life. I'm talking about how to overcome trauma and heal from it once and for all. Is that even possible? Can you really get past trauma and become even better because of it? If you let me, I will show you how you not only can overcome trauma and pain, but also use it to your advantage as your strength. So many of us have been there. We all go through difficulties in life, but going through traumatic experiences can truly break a person into a million pieces, and picking up those pieces can last you a lifetime. Most people never come back after falling that hard, and that right there is what trauma can do. It's not what they tell you, that because you had a rough childhood or traumatic life, you now have to suffer the consequences for the rest of your life. Mainstream psychologists in many cases will even have you thinking that depression, anxiety, and trauma are chemical imbalances caused by the brain without any real-life context, when in reality, you're only responding to what is going on in your life at that given time. Trauma doesn't actually manifest until we give it a meaning. Sure, many events in life can be traumatic and scary, especially as kids growing up, but it's not until we interpret those events, consciously or subconsciously in our limited minds, that we get scarred and actually traumatized to the point where it affects our normal life in a negative way. As kids, we are super vulnerable and impressionable to the outside world and all of its influences. At the same time, our deeper understanding of life is really limited. That's why trauma at a young age manifests much more profoundly than what might actually really be going on. It's not what happens to us, it's what happens inside of us. It's not the traumatic event that traumatizes us, it's our inadequate response that imprisons us. And while our response is immediate, it's dependent on a lot of things. How well did we understand the background story and reason? How well did we assess the overall situation and the people involved? Why did we or the people involved react the way we did? Is this the beginning or the end? Is this positive or negative? And if you're really honest with yourself, what child could honestly answer those questions with a deep understanding and a sense of nuance? And that is the reason why trauma follows us throughout life and compromises us, seriously affecting our potential to grow and flourish as humans. You'll hear all of these diagnoses being put on people and explanations of what they mean, but almost no explanations of why they exist in the first place. Why is a much more important question than what. Trauma, in essence, is an overreaction based on a lack of understanding that transforms into a behavior that we carry with us throughout life unless we actively do something about it. For example, your parents hit you as a kid. Now you're no longer a kid, but the memories are still there. And every time you think about that, it feels like you're being hit again. Even though you might no longer be in danger, you reacted to the trauma as a vulnerable kid, or perhaps as an adult, without a proper grasp of why it happened and what it meant. In most cases, that can lead to an overreaction of pain that manifests onto your personality. Pain itself is not the determining factor. Not being able to make sense of it is what traumatizes people. Whenever you think about it, you do it in the capacity of the emotional inner child, even though you might know better intellectually. This is how trauma haunts us. The problem here is not that we got hit, or that the memories are still stuck with us. The problem is that we didn't understand why it happened in the first place, and in many cases, we still don't really understand. And it is this darkness that haunts us, and it bleeds into all other areas of our personality and capability. Even as adults, we can feel empty and lost on the inside despite seemingly being successful on the outside. And if it's not resolved, it could lead to serious problems in life. It can make us feel like we are never enough, leading to the need to overachieve or simply giving up. As humans, we're only afraid of the things we do not understand. And when we don't understand, we tend to overreact. A lot of people are afraid of the darkness because they don't know what's hiding on the other side. Some people are afraid of spiders, for example, because it's so different compared to us. Many are afraid of other people from different countries, cultures, religions, and ethnicities based on their lack of understanding. There might be underlying trauma and a trigger, but the results tend to be the same, an overreaction. It's the story of the boogeyman, basically. The more we understand people, circumstances, and motives, the less afraid and judgmental we become, and the more we see the bigger picture of what is actually going on. Predictability creates comfort, and unpredictability creates fear. I've always wondered why some people could watch horror movies and enjoy themselves and even laugh, whilst other people would become completely traumatized. When I was a little kid, I was exposed to a lot of horror movies. You think that would harden me, but instead, it traumatized me in the exact same way as I previously explained. As an adult, I would completely avoid horror movies as it triggered too many emotions inside of me, and I would become a bit paranoid. Like I said, it's not what happens to us, it's what happens inside of us. Where is our focus? The external things that we might not be able to control, or the internal that we can actually take control over to a great extent? It's easy to blame others and call it a night. It's easy to turn your back and blame others for doing wrong. But if we really think about it, we would probably react the same way if we were in their shoes and see the similarities instead of differences, and start thinking that maybe we're not that different after all. Sure, a lot of us that have been through severe trauma, especially within the family, could never do to others what was done to us. But the perspective and understanding can help us. It's almost as if God is training us and giving us the keys to solve these kind of situations in the future. If we pay attention instead of fleeing, don't you think? The more our vision opens up, the better paths we can take. It's like blaming God for all the evil in the world, not realizing that it's bad decisions and poor judgment that leads to suffering. For years, I would blame my father, and it unfortunately affected our relationship. But I was only a kid trying to find my way. My father wasn't a bad man. He was a war-torn man with heavy PTSD and issues I just could not understand at my young age. He needed help, but he was left to his own devices. My mother had a truly traumatic upbringing and basically grew up with no parents. It was destined to be rough. I'm giving you some insights, but it was far more complicated and intricate than that. I know a lot of you out there have dealt with pure evil, but there is still hope. I promise you. Every human being has been blessed to fulfill his or her potential in this life. It's a blessing and a gift from God. But there is also a lot of evil in this world. Things don't always end up the way we imagine. This life is not what we think it is. It's not a playground with endless happiness. It's a test and a trial to show our Creator our true character. We will be tested. We will be tried. Just like we came into existence, we are going to be brought in front of our Lord to be judged. And this is what puts all the pieces together. This is what gives this whole life its purpose and meaning. This is the missing link that the whole mass media machine and the entertainment industry are trying to hide in order to rob us of our greatness, so that we only indulge in the things that are temporary and frivolous, so that we forget who we are instead of remembering what we could become. The less we believe in God, the more we start thinking that we are gods, in the sense that we make ourselves much more important than the will of our Creator. We make ourselves and our own confused thoughts and inclinations the focal point of our existence. This world is a play, albeit a serious one with great consequences. We are actors, and we have been given the freedom to choose what role we want to play. We are born into different circumstances and conditions, but that in itself is also our greatest gift. Our difficulties is the way we come to understand the world, ourselves, and ultimately God. A person who doesn't understand these rules of the game is going to think that the role and the context which they are born into is their only identity and entire life. Their ego will be the center of attention instead of focusing on the bigger picture. Either you make God your Lord, or you'll make your ego and desires your Lord, and then it's all about happiness and pleasure-seeking. And when bad and traumatizing things happen in life, there is no way out. You're left with a feeling of why me that leads to bitterness and missing out on the secret lessons. This is one of the great secrets, and I've seen and experienced it time and time again. The real reason we react negatively whenever life hits us is because we don't realize that God is testing us to help us grow. Instead, because we've turned ourselves into gods, we say, "Why me? Why now? Why, oh why?" This is why some people are able to become stronger through adversity while others crumble. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And it teaches you a lot. But if your mindset is to just be constantly happy and in a state of continuous pleasure, then you'll never understand, and you'll always blame others instead of taking accountability. They say ignorance is bliss. It's really not, because the reality of this world is harsh, no matter how much you try to ignore it. This world is supposed to break us. It's supposed to shape us and prepare us for what is to come. Whatever we may go through is an opportunity to grow spiritually, because this body will die, but the soul will move on. We take nothing with us, only the things we've learned and become. Famous actor Denzel Washington said, "First part of life you learn, second part you earn, and final part you return." Today, people are given prescription drugs. They are sent to meet psychiatrists and sent home with diagnoses and left to figure things out on their own. How can someone else solve your problems when you're the one that keeps telling yourself lies about what happened to you? Anything but the empowering truth is a lie. Trauma is about the hopeless story you keep telling yourself about what happened to you year after year. So it becomes crucial how we frame and think about this story inside of us. They say that thoughts becomes feelings that turn into actions, that turn into different outcomes, that reinforces our current trajectory. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become what you believe. What does this have to do with healing from trauma? Well, I don't see it as healing. You never actually heal from the traumatic things in life. It doesn't just go away. What you do is you understand why it happened, understand the rules of the game. In this case, the rules of this life. and how we should respond to all of this in the best way possible. This will give us a peace of mind that will help us overcome our struggles and traumas. Otherwise, we will constantly bleed on people that didn't hurt us. And trust me, this is far more powerful than you could ever imagine when you understand that you're not a victim, but rather a victor, that you've been given unique insights and lessons that were traumatic and difficult, but nevertheless written in your destiny. You realize that this was not by chance, but rather a part of your journey. And it makes a world of difference when you shift your focus from tragedy to opportunity. When I went through this process consciously, as it is a process, everything changed for me slowly but surely. Perspective is the real answer. Perspective makes you understand yourself and others much better. It allows you to forgive yourself and forgive others. It gives you the power to give meaning to events and situations instead of just reacting to them. There's a saying, "He who blames others has a long way to go. He who blames himself is halfway there, but he who blames no one has arrived." When your understanding reaches this point, you realize that it's not about constantly pointing fingers, but rather gaining wisdom and perspectives. The stories we tell ourselves every day in order to preserve our identity is either breaking us and making us feel miserable, or it's building us and helping us grow and become better. Is this the beginning or the end? We decide. It all depends on what we want from life. I'll say it again. It's not what happens to us. It's what happens inside of us. Where focus goes, energy flows. We've been holding on to our traumas for so long that it became the deepest part of ourselves. We became our trauma. But it's time to let go of it. We're no longer there, or we can get away from it. We just need to create a better identity and story inside of ourselves. Because what goes on the inside reflects itself on the outside. We need to take a deep look into ourselves, and I'm not talking about the mirror. I'm talking about the soul. Take some time to reflect and truly ask yourself why you're still holding on to the stories about your life that were created by the childish version of you. You're not a child or ignorant anymore. And perhaps that's why you're feeling that you can't get to the next level, because the inner child is still holding you hostage. And if you're experiencing trauma and all the crazy things attached to it right here, right now, and you don't know what to do, I'll make a video for you very soon. But basically, it's the same concept. Traumatic experiences only manifests as trauma when we're unable to put it into the right folders inside our inner being, and it just falls onto the ground and crashes into a million pieces. If you receive the fish, you will never grow and learn how to fish by yourself. There is a great reward and strength that comes with time, struggle, and patience. The things discussed here takes a minute to understand, but much longer to internalize. But with the right guidance, it can happen much faster. So don't give up, my friend. You're destined for greatness. Like, share, and subscribe so that we can grow as a community and become even better. Comment and share your experiences and ideas. I believe in you.